So, BC's forest industry is collapsing, one town at a time. Mills are shutting down across the province, not because of a bad quarter or a tough market, but because the wood is gone or it's too costly to get. Here are just a few since 2023. West Fraser closed its Fraser Lake sawmill early 2024. Canfor permanently shut the Polar Mill near Bear Lake, canceled its New Euston rebuild, and closed a pulp line in Prince George. Paper Excellence closed the Port Alberni paper mill, and Western Forest Products halted its APD mill in the same town. And now West Fraser is shutting down its 100-mile house mill. And right here in our backyard, Interfor's Grand Forks mill went into an indefinite shutdown in October. They call it maintenance, but when the paychecks stop, it doesn't feel temporary. Many of the press releases from the companies say the same thing: inadequate, economically viable timber. This isn't a market dip. It's what collapse looks like when the system runs out of feedstock. Across the province, the pattern is the same. Fraser Lake, Bear Lake, Houston, Prince George, Port Alberni, Grand Forks, and now Sinclair Group, cutting production by 40% in Prince George, Vanderhoof, and Fort St. James. Since 2005, at least 44 mills, 35 in the interior and 9 on the coast, have closed permanently. Business in Vancouver puts the number even higher when you count shift losses, around 56 mills impacted. All this has an enormous impact on communities. BC's annual timber harvest fell from 68 million cubic meters in 2015 to under 39 million by 2023, and it's expected to sink to around 35 million for 2025. The forests haven't disappeared entirely, but the economically viable fiber has. What's left is smaller, it's on steeper slopes, and it's drier and it's further away. The province's own data shows that the forests feeding BC's mills have been systematically stripped of their highest productivity trees. Only 2.5 million hectares of high productivity primary forest remain. That's less than 10% of what's left. And most of that is in tiny, isolated patches surrounded by degraded land. In other words, the big treed forests that the mills were built for are almost gone. The industry didn't lose competitiveness, it ran out of the kind of forest it needs to survive. So the industry built itself around really large and even supersized mills, massive, high throughput machines that can't adapt when supply tightens. When one of those monster mills goes down, it takes a region's contractors, truckers, and chip suppliers with it. Sawmills feed pulp, pellet, and panel plants with their residual chips. And when the sawmills die, the others starve too. Or they resort to cutting down what little is left of old growth to make pellets to ship to the UK via Drax. In Grand Forks, our Interfor mill is technically not closed, it's just indefinitely shut down. The mayor had to fly to Ottawa to put the town's survival on the national radar. Interfor lost $216 million in the third quarter of 2025. And now we hear maybe one shift will restart. That's not stability, that's stop-start survival. And it's the same story everywhere. A few dozen to 100 direct jobs vanish, and then shock ripples through hundreds of families. Tree planters, truck drivers, mechanics, diners, motels, small suppliers. The mills go quiet, but the mortgage payments keep coming. And this is what happens when you rely on a single industry to support a network of other industries. When you tie the economy of an entire town to a single non-renewable supply stream. Back in 2019, when I was traveling from northern BC to the Okanagan to attend a reception where the Premier and the then Minister of Forests were attending to plead my case, my car broke down in 100 Mile House, and it was a Sunday. Somebody gave me the number for the local mechanic, and he was kind enough to come out on Sunday, check out my car, and he said, sorry, I can't get a new water pump for a couple of days. And then he was even kinder, and he lent me his minivan. And that was after I told him my story. And he told me that his business was probably going to go down because most of his customers came from forestry, and forestry was tanking in their region at that time. Across the province, forestry makes up less than 2% of total employment, around 50,000 direct jobs out of 2.7 million. When politicians get cornered, they blame US tariffs. But tariffs didn't fell those trees. And they're not the thing taking down the mills. Softwood duties have been around since the 80s. US duties have been at around 20 to 25% in various years since 2017. Companies even posted record profits while paying millions in the duty deposits. For example, West Fraser's full year earnings in 2021 were 2.95 billion. Compared to 2020, those earnings were 5 times higher and their sales more than doubled. That year, their softwood lumber duty deposits totaled 397 million. Interfor posted a record 1.4 billion in operating earnings in 2021, even while paying 147 million in softwood lumber duties. What changed wasn't the fact that tariffs exist. What changed was the forest. Nearly a third of all BC forest has already been industrially degraded, 18 million hectares. Clear cutting alone has damaged 10 million hectares of the most productive ecosystems, the exact forests that produce high value timber and stable harvest levels. When the most productive forests become the most degraded forests, it doesn't matter what the tariff rate is. The system collapses from inside. The ministry's own data shows BC's harvest fell by almost half in a decade. You can't complain your way out of a missing timber supply. Canfor and West Fraser admit it. They can't find enough economically available fiber. And that's the truth hiding in every news release. Tariffs hurt profits. Depletion kills the industry. There's no Asian marketing campaign or London trade office that fixes that. The buzzword in Victoria is value added. When I talk to MLAs about the new Forest Act, they always ask, does it support value added? But a 2025 Tyee investigation found that even community forest logs meant for local small-scale manufacturing are trucked hundreds of kilometers to the big pulp and chip mills instead. 2 out of 3 trees from community forests end up with just 10 major companies. Small mills, like the one in Valemont mentioned in this article, are starved of supply. Government uses the word diversification, but what it's really been doing over the past 20 years is incentivizing consolidation. The province's own data shows that 70% of all degraded forests is on this very same sites that used to grow BC's biggest, highest value trees. And meanwhile, the province celebrates exporting pellets to Japan and the UK, pellets made from low-grade fiber and sometimes whole logs. I've heard it said, pellets are what you do when you're out of ideas. Under BC's current rules, companies keep their tenure by cutting volume. The more they cut, the more secure their rights are. If they don't cut enough, they risk losing quota. Recently, the Minister of Forests has said, if you don't cut, we're coming for your fiber. Government revenue is tied to stumpage per cubic meter. So the budget literally depends on how much gets logged, not on how well it's managed. Stumpage rates are set before milling, so there's no incentive to get higher value from each log. There is an assembly line model built on finite raw material. It rewards speed and waste over skill and efficiency. Forestry right now is an incentive system designed for depletion. The province has systematically protected the forests with the least economic value, the small tree, low productivity ecosystems, while logging continued to target the high productivity, big treed forests. Less than 5% of that high productivity old growth is protected. So industry can't blame environmental protections for the recent downturns. BC's own data makes it brutally clear. We don't just have a timber problem, we have a structure problem. The province manages forests like a volume factory, but the forests themselves don't behave like factories. They're ecological systems with limits. You cannot rebuild an industry on depleted ecosystems. So the answer isn't nostalgia, it's design. And we're not guessing about the answer. We didn't wake up one day and scribble some wish list on a napkin. This is not a tree hugger fantasy. The new Forest Act was developed with the help of loggers and former Ministry of Forest employees. We've spent years, literally years, researching the data, the failures, and the hard lessons across the province. And the conclusion is unavoidable. You can't fix a structural collapse with marketing, subsidies, or status quo. You fix it by facing reality and changing the structure based on reality. And the new Forest Act is that structural fix. It's not theory. It works by flipping the incentives. Number one, lower the cut to ecological limits so supply stabilizes, and then adjust the entire system around that. Number two, community forest boards give local control over protection, restoration, and logging. Number three, reward value, not volume. Support regional log sort yards and regional mills that hire skilled workers instead of exporting raw logs. Number four, reform revenues. Tie returns to ecosystem outcomes, clean water, biodiverse landscapes, and community jobs that last. Number five, diversify employment. Restoration crews, Indigenous guardians, forest stewards, forestry science, and ecotourism. This is how you build stability without pretending primary forests regrow to match manufacturing cycles. Grand Forks can't live on shutdowns that restart for a single shift, either can Fraser Lake, Bear Lake, or 100 Mile House. The mills aren't coming back under the old rules. The forest can't sustain them. It's time to stop treating logging like an infinite feedstock and start treating forests as the critical infrastructure that they are. They are the systems that hold water, that mitigate weather, and keep communities safe and standing. We can cut less wood and employ more people if we change the rules. The new Forest Act does that. It replaces denial with design. Stay tuned as we tell you more details about that with subsequent videos.